Hey, this is Dr. Kid again, and I want to welcome you to another episode of The Shake Up. You know how that goes. Shake it up. All the good stuff settles in relationships, in anything that has more than one component in it, it will settle to the bottom. And, we're dealing a lot with relationships and how the various factors in life can impact our relationship. So here we go, and we're doing this again. Dr. Kid speaks, and so we're doing a shakeup, and we started last week with I'm doing an episode. It'll be several episodes, maybe about 4 or 5, maybe 6 episodes. Started last week, and we're dealing with grief, and that's some really good feedback on that. This whole thing about grief, creating some new understandings about grief, and so I'll be running solo here for the next little while because I think it's really important that I do this coming from a place of where I work and also the my background working with families and individuals and couples and marriage and so on and so forth. And so I want to go back and start dealing with grief. Last week we started looking basically at the introduction to grief, and I don't want to go back over that because it's time. But we did take a look at what grief might look like and how people grieve and so on. And I'm going to be doing some more of that again this evening, but it will be a little bit different. And we'll be looking at the structure of grieving and grief and making some pretty clear distinctions as we go through this. Okay, some clear distinctions. All right, so here we go. And of course, we'd like you to follow, share, and follow, share, and subscribe. All right, follow, share, and subscribe. It's the lifeblood of all podcasts. All podcasts. You have some really good podcasters out there doing some excellent things. And when you find somebody, just follow, share, and subscribe so that a variety of good information can get out there to the world. And of course, as always, we'd like to have you on the show. And all you got to do is go to drkidspeaks@gmail.com. Contact my office, and my team will be sure to get you on there so that we can hear what you got to say. Nobody knows what you got to say, and no one can say it like you can say it. So don't think you got to be an expert on anything except being an expert on yourself, because you know who you are. So drkidspeaks@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here, on camera or off camera. All right. And so this evening, we're going to get right into it. This is a 4-part series on the shakeup, and we're going to move forward now. So tonight, we're looking at the structure of mourning and grieving. And I'm going to be making a distinction between mourning and grieving. All right. So we're going to move ahead. Put up my next slide here. It says that mourning, is the outward or the behavioral expression or response to the pain of loss. All right. And what am I saying here? That a lot of people think that mourning and grieving is the same thing. Well, they're very similar. They're even closer than cousins. But it's different. It's got some distinct difference. And so let me put it this way: that the mourning, we get to grief in a moment. Mourning is the outward expression. How do we behave when we experience loss? Because loss brings on pain. And so we need to understand that. And again, I'm going to say that we need to be able to grieve all losses we need to grieve. So back to mourning, then we discover that it is the behavioral part of under the umbrella of grief. So, they talk about mourners in the Bible, and in some cultures, they have mourners. And the mourners, they are not necessarily even related to the people who have suffered the loss, but it might be a part of the cultural uh, component, as to say a part of the mourning piece then would be in our culture here, would be, say, funerals. How do we behave? How do we express our pain? We express it through funeral, and funerals are well adapted and well crafted and very well articulated, and of course, different different mourning processes would include, say, like I said, the funerals. What does that look like? Some funerals are more sedate, okay, kind of a downbeat, and others, depending on the culture, it's very, very upbeat, and it's all about joy and expression and laughter and everything. Some we're talking about mourning now. Some cultures, they have, like, more recently here now, we've been doing here, um, pictures. They have pictorials. They have a whole reel of pictures and music, and they show you different parts of the person's life. And some are funny and some are not. And so what happens here is it gives those who are grieving a time to break away from the grief and go through the mourning process, because a lot of funny things happen. And even when people are making uh, their characteristical speech about the person, a lot of times that stuff is so funny. They talk about all the funny things that they do. That is a part of the mourning process. Now, is there a function to that? Yeah, it breaks up the intense feelings that people are going through in, when it comes to the grieving process. So cultural and religious, those are two different kinds of schools of how people mourn. There's a cultural piece which is very large. It engulfs the entire culture. But different religious pockets within the culture will have different kinds of behavior and traditions and customs. These are some of the things that they go through. And so the various religious groups and non-religious group, sectarian and non-sectarian group, will have what they call their own types of the mourning process. And it is an integral part of the process of just mourning and going through um, what are very important to the family, because it keeps them to some degree connected with the past and breaks the intensity of the grieving process. All right, so we're going to go to our next slide. I'm gonna pull that up, and it says, okay, 6'5". Thank you so much, 240. Sometimes lies happen at funerals as well, so that people don't offend others and let them know about the true person that has died. And that is so true. Some people, they will stretch the story, and sometimes you wonder, are they talking about the person that I really know? And a part of that is, why they do that again is it's their way of like sometimes the people who are stretching the stories. Okay, it's their way of making sure that they can make it through the funeral or through the process without falling apart. They've got to find a way, a buffer for the intensity of their loss that they're feeling. And so what they want to do, they want to get other people to join into that with them, So they, craft a lot of really funny stories. You're right, they do stretch it, but it does have the function of diminishing a lot of the stress and the pain associated with the loss, both for the person who's speaking and for the family members and friends. Okay, so so a funeral or celebration of life after someone passes is a ritual of mourning. Okay, so I'm going to go down through this really quick. Sharing positive memories of the person, you know, that too is very, very important. The positive memories, again, these things here in the mourning process, it is their way of making sure the high um, feeling of pain. Some people will plant trees or flowers in memory of the person, and they will go on an annual basis, visit the tree. Some people visit the grave site as they go through life, just so that they, for some people, depending on what they believe, they say that they can go there and speak to the spirit of the person. And I will say this: we should not denigrate the way people choose to mourn, because it's at that time when they are in their greatest pain, when they need the greatest amount of understanding. Some people donate to an organization that they were a part of, and so that their names can be inscribed on a plaque or on a wall, and you know other people, they create um, various different types of schools of monetary donation where people can get monies, so that they can uh, continue with their education. That's a big thing. The scholarships, so they can do that in the name of starting a foundation to raise awareness of specific conditions. If a person died from a particular disease, or they might start a foundation, or they may donate to a foundation and become a part of a foundation in order to make information and help from a monetary point of view available to others who are going through some of the same types of situations in their lives. So we're starting foundation awareness of specific conditions. All right. So we're going to move forward now to our next slide. Okay. Um, it's okay. Ellen G said the comedy sessions in funeral, will it stall or delay the grieving process? No, it's not going to stall or delay the grieving process. What it does, it takes the edge off of the grieving process, but they know that they are going to go through that. And it might, yeah, I guess I could say it does have the capacity to stall this, but not to stall it in a way that is out of their memory. They understand that it's there. And so it's like somebody in the gym, and they're pressing some weight, some really heavy weight, and so the weight of the grief is so much that they need a spotter, somebody who can help them, carry the load for them sometimes when it's necessary. And so a lot of the stuff that we see in funerals, it is they're like an emotional spotter, where they have somebody to help them. Those moments will help them go through through uh, through the process of the pain of the loss. And so yeah, it does have that. So it's very functional. It's a very functional thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. in some old days, they would have paid mourners. They ain't got a clue who's dead, but they go and boy, can they mourn and wail, and they do an excellent job. That too breaks the intensity of those who are experiencing the loss. All right, everyone mourns differently. Thank you, Christine Lambert. Some people choose to not attend funerals and cemeteries. Absolutely. Some people will choose not to attend a funeral or a cemetery, especially if they are going through what is an unfinished loss that they have experienced, in the recent future or in the remote far future that they still have not dealt with. And so to go to funerals and or cemetery, it triggers a lot of the things that they are still wrestling with. So some people just don't go. And sometimes we say, well, it's a shame that so-and-so did not go to so-and-so's funeral. But we need to understand this very point that you're making here. It is such an important point. And I'm so glad, Christine, that you mentioned this. And this is why they just keep on bringing your ideas into this. It's all very, very relevant stuff. And so, yeah, people will do that because they are still in the throes of their pain. Very good. Excellent point. All right. So, okay, Tracy, some people use body arts or tattoos to process grief. Yes. And so sometimes when we see people with tattoos, and we don't like tattoos, and so we take a very dim view of people with tattoos and ask, how can they do that to their bodies? Well, it's their way of keeping the deceased person very close to them. It's on their skin. And so therefore, being there, it doesn't get much closer than that unless they ingest them on the inside, which we know they're not going to be able to do that. So yes, tattoos, very, very good cultural memorabilias. And so all of these things that you all are saying, just telling me here, it's very important. They're very good. And so they're like their pain block. These things here that we're talking about, it's like you know how it is. You have a headache, really bad headache, and it hurts, and it doesn't matter what how you got the headache. You got it. The cause and the experience are two different things. So you're going through this headache, and you take some Tylenol. Well, for people who are going through various types of meaningful losses, they might need something. They often need something to go through to break the pain. I call that emotional anesthesia. Emotional anesthesia, because we know that anesthesia is what they give us to stop us from feeling the pain, but the pain is ever present. The anesthesia just reorganize the body system, all right, the nervous system, so that you can't feel the pain that's there. And as soon as the when the anesthesia is at its highest point, then your pain level is at its lowest point. And then as it begins to roll off and the anesthesia begins to wear off, your pain level begins to come back. And now you have to contend with the reality of the natural rawness of the pain when the anesthesia wears off. And let me just throw this in as a plug. This is a part of the reason why people drink and do drugs and do other things that we decry and say, man, something is wrong with them. They're an alcoholic, or they're a drug addict, or they're a drug head. No, people are anesthetizing themselves because they are going through something that you and I don't know. So I think great understanding and empathy should be the watchword here. And then we can talk with them through that and even begin to join them as much as we can in the process of their pain And maybe somewhere along the road, we can then help them to not have to use the anesthesia, but to come close to it. Because what happens here is it, this anesthesia helps to put their pain in the subconscious, And you cannot grieve something that you're not conscious of. It's just impossible. And so because of the of how powerful the pain is, they try to numb this with some things that distracts them from themselves. And everybody's got a distraction. And we should not put ourselves in the place to become judge, juror, and God about how people distract themselves from these things. Sometimes we think that the grieving and the mourning process, it's a matter of salvation. No, it's a matter of survival sometimes. When you miss people, Jesus, when Lazarus died, the shortest passage in the Bible says Jesus wept. Jesus wept. He was hurt when his friend, who he loves, died, and so he wept. And so again, put it in a biblical cultural way. We got to be open to the various modalities of how people mourn. Okay, so we're gonna go on. A functional or celebration of life after someone passes is a ritual of mourning, sharing positive memories of the person. Yes. So we talked about this, and planting a tree. So let's move on to our next slide. We're going to put it up. And so we're talking now about grieving. Remember, we talked about mourning. Mourning is the behavior part, how you act it out. This is what people can see. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, people cannot see your grief. Your grief has no structure. It has no legs, has no eyes, has no ears. If you're crying, what you're doing, you're grieving, and so you let people know the degree to which you're grieving through your mourning process. All right, that's what happens here. So the grieving, we cannot not grieve. I know that's a double negative right there. We cannot not grieve. Everybody will grieve something or someone at some point. Big mistake is we think that we need to grieve people, places, and things outside of the self. But we need to learn to get in touch with our own feelings, our own needs, things about ourselves that are important. And even when we do not achieve what we want to achieve, there is room for grieving. There really is room for grieving. If you didn't pass your test or your exam, okay, there is room for grieving. Now, grieving does not mean that you're falling out and rolling all over the floor. There are different levels and types of grieving, different depths of grief and grieving. So you cannot not grieve. If there's a sense of sadness in this, then you are going through the grief process. All right. How we grieve is the issue. That's it. It's not that we can't. It's just, how do we grieve? How do we grieve? And something else here, you've got, like I said, you've got to be able to accept your loss. You may not like your loss, but you certainly will have to accept it. If you recognize that you have this loss, you have already accepted the loss. Acceptance doesn't mean you got to go and do some research or be able to speak in a very profound way about your loss. No, if you're experiencing some pain because of the unavailability of people, places, or things, that when those people, places, or things were available to you. It gave you a sense of well-being. It gave you a sense of stability. It gave you a sense of joy. It gave you a sense of pleasure that when that thing or that person or that place is no longer available to you, you cannot feel the way you want to feel. I would go so far as to say that, you know, it's up for grabs in my mind at this time, whether or not we really grieve the loss of people, or do we grieve the loss of myself that was and what I received out of that person being available to me. And unless that person is available to me, I can't feel and experience what I was experiencing. And I like what I was experiencing. And so therefore I want the person to be here, but they're not. Therefore I feel empty. I feel empty. So there are different ways to look at, at the grieving process. Are you grieving the loss of a person, or are you grieving the loss of yourself because that person is absent from you? And it's not something that we should argue about, because we just don't know. We just don't know. Christine Lambert, Dr. Kit, any recommendation on not always beating myself up or saying I should have done more and said more and always be there for everyone? Well, Christine, you got to be careful now, and I'm just going to keep that up for a little bit. All feeling like you should have done more, feeling like you should have said more, feeling like you should have always been there for that person. You got to check and see to yourself, see that there might be something about me that's making me put myself in these positions. Am I a rescuer of people? Do I like the idea of rescuing people? Is that a way for me to feel good about myself, to pat myself on the head and say, you've done good? But I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. When you should have done more, the point here is, did you do more when you could have done more? And maybe there are times when you could not have done more because it would cost you something about your own well-being. And so now that the person is not here, it's easy for you to say, I should have said more. I should have said, I love you more. I should have been there more. I should have taken them out more. All the things that you could have done, okay? You got to be very careful, because you can drive yourself into feeling guilty. This thing we call guilt. You can't see guilt. It just happens to act its way out in your life. And so, yeah, should I have done more? Well, you're the only one who knows that. We've got to get should I have said more and always be there for someone? There is a cost at being there for everybody else. A cost to you. While you're being there for them, who is being there for you? Are you being there for yourself? So let me tell you this. We just came back flying, we were in another city, so we flew back. And this happens every time. It happens every time. The captain said, welcome to flight so-and-so. And he said, my name is such and such. And he said, listen, I got some really good people in the cabin, and they are hostesses, or whatever they call them. They do call them all kinds of different names these days. And they're going to take care of you. Flight attendants. They're going to take care of you. They said, turn your attention to the flight attendants. They turn attention to the flight attendants, and they give you a whole history of things. The bathrooms, if lights, if it goes out, the doors, all kind of stuff they tell you. This is what they say. This is what they say. In the event that there is a loss of pressure, oxygen, a mask will drop down from above you. Put the mask over somebody else's face first. I don't think so. He said, put the mask over your face first so you can resuscitate yourself and you can position yourself to help somebody else. So Christine, taking care of yourself, it is paramount. It is so paramount. Putting the mask over your face first so you can be there for others, but you cannot always be there for other people under all circumstances without maybe creating some damage to yourself. And if they are not here because they are deceased, and who will you have to take care of you, to help you now? And now you discover that you ran yourself into the ground trying to take care of people. Nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying here is make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you tell yourself and that you are well convinced that you have done the best you could under the circumstances that you were living with. All right. I'm hoping that might have been some help to you, because you cannot always help other people. We're here in the Shake Up with Dr. Kit, and we're going with my second installment of grief. So we talked about mourning first, and now we're down to grieving, how we grieve. Grieving is a healthy, emotional, experiential, responsive expression to a loss. It is experiential. That makes it different from mourning. Mourning is a behavioral piece, but an experience is how you see yourself in a way that you cannot express it the way you are experiencing it. You cannot, let me say this again, you cannot express your experience the way you experienced it. You can only put on a show of your experience, or if you're going to describe it, you are going to use words about your experience now of an experience you had back then. So you cannot transform your experience. You cannot relocate your experience to someplace else. It will not work like that. Your experience of yourself is a one and done. Sometimes some people say, well, every time I do this, I feel this way. Every time you do this and you feel this way, it is a brand new experience. It feels the same. You can predict it, but the experience of the experience, it is brand spanking new. Why? Because you can't treat today's last week's headache today. If it's over, it's done. And you got another headache today. And so you got to deal with that. So grieving is it experiential. And because it's experiential, you're the only one who can experience your grief. Everybody in the family is boo-hooing, crying, doing all this kind of stuff. And everybody's grieving the same way. And one person down there in the corner is very silent, or they're gone out for a walk. They're very withdrawn. Or somebody over here is, they're listening to music or watching comedy. This is the way they take care of themselves. It is at the core of who am I? See, that's the question. It is what we call an existential question, a question about your existence. Who am I? Who is this person? Do you know who this person is? Do you know that? Let's go on to the next slide here. Who is this person? And as you take a look at this, you discover that, again, who you are is your experience of yourself having an experience with yourself. Your experience of yourself having an experience of yourself. And it is the having part that is the dynamic part that you're going through. Who am I? What makes me different? So the who here is the who-ness, and I'm killing the English language now. So don't tell nobody, man, that this man never went to school. It's almost night. I went to night school. It's almost coming down. So I'll be good in just a few minutes. Your who-ness, it differentiates you from all other persons on the planet. It differentiates you. You can be in a whole crowd of people, and you're looking over and you see somebody over there, go, who is that? Oh man, that's Janice. Oh, Janice, there are 100,000 people at the ball game, and you just happen to look over there and say, that's Janice. How do you know that's Janice? Man, how do you know that's Janice? I know her hair. I know this. I know all this kind of stuff. It differentiates you from everybody else. Your who-ness separates you from everybody else on the planet, which means that your behavior about everything will be different from everybody else. Am is like now. Am is like in this very moment. So the question, therefore, then speaks to your experience of yourself in the now. The question is, who am I like now? Who am? Amness now. And again, your amness will change. The way you experience yourself, okay, in your amness, because your amness is always fluid, it's moving. You know, your amness this morning is not the same amness that you have now in the afternoon, although your who-ness might remain the same because people can pick you up. But your amness is your experience of yourself in this moment. Your I-ness, your I, who am I, is what separates you from all other people experientially. Your who is what separates you from all of the people structurally. Your height, your color, your this, your that, all this kind of stuff. But your I-ness now is you can't see that. You can see your who-ness, but you can't see that. You can tell your amness because you know what time it is, and you're always in your amness, in your grief, always in the amness of your grief, always in the amness of your grief while you are grieving. And your I-ness is what separates you from how you grieve your amness, in your how you grieve in your now. How you grieve in your now. That's what I'm talking about when I say, who am I? Who? Category. Categorically, you're different. Am in this moment. Amness. Your I-ness says, but what am I going through here? And your amness and your I-ness is fluid. They will change. Your who-ness changes very little, or if anything, or if any kind of change. And all of these then impact how you are going to grieve. In this amness, the question here is, what else is going on with me that may not be associated with this particular loss that I'm going through right now? There are other things that are going through that's impacting how that is migrated into my now, into my amness, that's impacting how I am going through my grief process. It helps you stay in touch with the current reality of your change or loss. And again, change, loss. Please remember that grieve all losses. Don't let people trick you into saying that, oh man, that's just a little thing. It might be a little thing for them, or they might say it's a little thing, because here's what happens. When somebody's around, when somebody that do not want to go through their grief, when they're around other people that are going through their grief, expressing their grief through the mourning process, okay, what happens sometimes is some people will try to get you to abort your grief process. Get you to abort it. Why? Because they like being around you, but they don't like what you're going through, because what you're going through in your grief is taking them back to their stuff, which is in their, and I'm going to put another word up here. See, all of this stuff that people are trying to get you not to get in touch with, okay, it's somewhere. It really is. See this here? This is my phone. My phone. My phone. And when I bought this phone here, you know, a couple of days after I bought the phone, I got this message saying, Google said, "Hey, Mr. Francis." I said, you know, I'm reading this thing. "Mr. Francis, we just noticed that you just bought a new phone. And, you know, we'd like to introduce you to, you know, we're having a great deal on, you know, increasing the size of your iCloud. You can store all your pictures, all your memorabilia, everything in this, and you will never run out, because you can always continue to do what? To upgrade the you know, your storage capacity. Well, some of us have what I call an emotional iCloud. Let it soak in. An emotional iCloud. Your emotional iCloud is what resides in your subconscious. And that is where we put things that we don't want to have to deal with in the now. My I-ness don't want to deal with it in my nowness. Like, because to deal with it now, I'm not emotionally situated that I can handle it. And I don't have a spotter close to me that I can share this with. And sometimes I just don't want a spotter. I just might want to be all by myself. So I put things in my emotional iCloud until I get to a place where I can handle me. And then get what do? I go into my emotional iCloud and I pull things down one at a time and I deal with this. I tell you, everybody's got an emotional iCloud, regardless of whether they know it or not. And our emotional iCloud is our friend because sometimes it will stop us from having to deal with the flooding of emotions that we will go through. And so we put it in storage. You know how it is? You move somewhere, you put things in storage. You don't need it right now, but you know where to go and get it. You got a key, you got a padlock, you got all this stuff. You know exactly where it is. So you can go get it when you want. Your emotional iCloud is like that. Your emotional backpack is like that. Your emotional backpack, it is, you can put as much as you want to in it because it's expandable. All right. So having said all of that, then, let's get back to the slide. So having said all of that, it helps you to take care of yourself. And so the process, the expression of the grieving process is personal and individually, and here's the word, complex, which means that you cannot understand it. Now that this word complex, if you understand it well, it should let you know that you don't have to discuss the way you're going to grieve. You don't need to do that because no one is feeling your pain. Maybe the same family, same everything else, but they can't do that. So Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified 5 stages. Okay, Christine, how long is a healthy grieving time frame? I'm now on antidepressant for loss of my unborn child. Oh, man, we're talking about some stuff here. Oh, that is tough. That is tough. Keep it up there for a number of reasons. An unborn, I remember, when my wife and I, she was in nursing school when, when we got married, and so we put off having children. And then one day she said to me, and here's the way she stated it. She said, I am ready to be a mother. And I won't forget that. She didn't say I'm ready to have children. She said, I'm ready to be a mother. And so your unborn child, just the fact that you had a loss, even if you have other children, okay, it stopped you from being a mother to this child, that you had all kinds of things buzzing in your head, all kinds of vision and happiness and doing and dressing up and going places with this child, because having a child gives you a different sense of who you are from all the other children that you have. Every child gives you a different sense of who you are. And so this unborn child, now let's go back to something I said, I may not have said, but what happens here, this unborn child, Adam said, Eve, when he looked at her, he said, she is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, which means that everything that Eve experienced, Adam would experience it. Everything Adam experienced, Eve would. Why? Because Eve now became the part of Adam that lived outside of Adam. And Adam became the part of Eve that lived outside of Eve. Your unborn child, your unborn child, right, was a part of you inside of you. At birth, that child would now express the part of yourself that was inside of yourself, that is now outside of yourself. And you're having all this joy looking at this part of yourself outside of yourself, and it feels so good. Yeah, you know, it's a different kind of grief that we're talking about here, because there is the disappointment. And sometimes you may even go to the point of saying, what did I do? Could I have done this? Could I have done all that? Oh, and guilt will eat you up. Guilt. And again, I'm going to say, Christine, that people can say, oh, do this, do that, and do the other. It's difficult for anyone to tell you what to do, because again, here is the word. It is an experience, and you cannot have an experience for somebody else. Neither can anyone understand your experience. And so listen, you're grieving for time frame. The time frame is up to the person who is grieving, because if it's short, there is a reason for it to be short. If it's long, there is a reason for it to be long. And so what needs to happen here is this: if you can talk to somebody about this, hopefully somebody who is empathetic and can talk you through the loss. Hear what I'm about to say: the loss, not of your baby, but the loss of a part of yourself. Yeah. And if you can feel, whenever I'm dealing with people talking like, the question that I ask is, are you able to talk about this now? Sometimes I get a yes, sometimes I get a no. And I never say, well, when you're ready. No, no, no. They know when they'll be ready. They will know that. And so the healthy, sometimes, Christine, it's not the length of time that defines a healthy grieving. It's what you do with yourself during that time that can also define what is healthy grieving. Because if you are going to to distance yourself from the loss, and you try to placate yourself, try to massage it away, then that process alone is not a healthy way necessarily to grieve. But listen, there is a difference between, is it healthy or is it functional? Some things that don't look healthy, they are functional, because your uniqueness of how you handle pain will make it functional, whilst other people will say it is unhealthy. That's for them. But the time frame, you decide what that is, because some people will say, man, it's been 2 years. There's been so many long. When you gonna stop grieving? When you gonna stop doing this? And you know what it is? Your grief and the prolonging of your grief reminds them of their unresolved grief. And so they're trying to tell you, listen, they're not going to tell you this, but say, listen, I've been grieving. I'm still in grief. And when I see you, it reminds me of my grief. I want to be around people who don't remind me of my grief. And they try to stop you from grieving, so you don't know. We want to do that. So it's a very complex issue, and it's very individuated. Everybody has got their own type of how they grieve, and when they grieve, and how long they grieve for. 6-5-20, so short or long, just make sure you grieve the loss. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And I will go so far to say this again: make sure when you are grieving the loss, you are not just grieving the loss of the person, but you are grieving the loss of yourself, that is no longer available to you, because you require that person to be around to activate it. All right, to activate it. And so since Kristen, you just raised this issue about the unborn child. you know, then we've got to also think about the conditions and the reason for the loss. It does a whole lot of other things. I'm hoping I can get to that when we're going to get to that in just a little bit. So Kubler-Ross, she said, listen, she said these 5 things. She said denial, trying to deny what it's not happening, or it didn't happen, it's not happening. Well, I'm hoping we don't stay in denial for a long time. Anger, who are we angry at? Are we angry at the person because the person went out and did something that they should not have done? Or am I angry at me because I did not do what I should have done? You know what I'm saying? Bargaining. Who am I going to bargain? Some people say they bargain with God. God, it can't be real. It can't be real, God. Tell me it's not real, God. Bring that person back, Lord God. I just want to see them walk through the house, God. You know what? And I'm not going to tell people that they should not do that. Again, I'm being very careful and very cautious about how people grieve, how they grieve, And then some people go into depression, like our last person said. They're an antidepressant, and the antidepressant, that is now become their emotional anesthesia. But one of the things about that, though, when you're going through that, make sure that you grieve and grieve effectively, because the degree to which the antidepressant works is the degree to which you may become, you may use it as your way of coping, and you never get past the need for it. It's like me, I broke a leg, and a year down the road, I'm still wearing crutches. Why? Because I did not try to go through the healing process and the reformation of my the bone structure and my muscle and exercise. So try to make sure that you are doing that, so that the antidepressant don't become the part of you, excuse me, that carries you. So bargaining, depression, and she says acceptance. Well, see, I have an issue with the way she lays this out. There's another guy's name is Warden. He starts out with acceptance, and to me that makes sense. You cannot deal with something that you're not conscious of, and if you're not conscious of something, you can't accept it. So acceptance then becomes the primary level of grieving. You are aware of this. You are aware of something. Awareness that something is going on. And the fact that you are aware of it, it means that you have accepted the fact that it's going on. Okay. And so you don't have to like what you accept, but you cannot not accept something that happened. If it's into your consciousness, you've already accepted the fact that it is. So there's a difference between accepting something for what it is and accepting it because you like it. Some people say, "No, I can't. I will never accept that. I can't accept that." Well, the fact that you're talking about it means you have accepted it. You've accepted it, and so it said, if the grieving person does not adequately complete each stage prior to advancing, because there are stages in grief, like what Kubler-Ross here went through, And one of the things I will say about this, that you're not necessarily going down through these chronology. It's not, you got to be in denial. You got to be, you can be at any one place or 2 places in this list of 5 here at any one time. Okay, at any one time, and you may be in one place a little bit longer, depending on who you are and the loss. Okay, so if the grieving person does not adequately complete each stage prior to advancing to the next level of adaptation might be impaired. And don't let somebody tell you when you should come out of one level. It's yours. You claim it. You do what you do with it. It is, you decide who you are. Remember, you're amnes, because in grieving, you are always in the amnes, like always. You cannot grieve something that you are not aware of. And so what happens here is when when you take emotional anesthesia, it takes you away from that. You're not conscious of it. So now what you're really doing is moving away from from the pain of the moment and the loss and the abandonment and everything else that you might feel. Okay, so you've got to be able to do that. So it says successfully answering the question of who am I allows each person to decide how they want to grieve and mourn, negating the need for permission. You don't need anybody's permission from one person outside of the self to dictate the quality and quantity of the process. The quality, what it feels like, the quantity, we're back to that how long. You decide that grieving does not have a specific time frame. It is impacted by unique biopsychosocial, financial, spiritual nuances and or conditions. Those are some of the things that dictates how you grieve. And the thing about it is even if you have major losses in one family, you will not grieve the same way for each loss. You will not. And I think I got. Let's go to the next slide and see if I did put it in here. You will not grieve the same way for all of your losses. It just doesn't work. Why? Because the degree of attachment that you have or had with the person will define the degree of loss, the degree of pain, the degree of emptiness, the degree of the vacuum in which you live in. Just that, the degree to which you were attached. And there's more I'm going to say about it in upcoming sessions. Okay. But just know that the degree to which that you were attached, all right, will certainly impact the way you grieve and the quality of the grief and the quantity of the grief and what you do. How do you take care of yourself privately and in publicly as you're going through your grief process? And don't let anyone tell you how you should grieve or you shouldn't grieve. It's a kind of a catch-22. Some things are unhealthy and some things are healthy. Some things are legal, some things are illegal. But the truth is, I don't know your pain. I really don't. And so those are things that you got to kind of work through for yourself, because I don't know. I really don't. And I don't think anybody else does either. They don't. So I just want to thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. 6-5, great discussion. Thank you, 6-5. I'm hoping that it was good for you and that it was good for other people. And Christine, thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. I'm hoping that what I said will work. LNG, Dr. K, great information once again. And I'm so glad that I can bring these and kind of do, shake up things and so that you don't kind of just become sedate and prolong your loss. There are more things that we're going to be talking about in next session next week. So please, like, share, subscribe, and follow. Do all those things and let people know that we're dealing with a very timely subject which impacts all of us. But the question is, how do we deal with it? See, that's what I'm talking about. It impacts all of us, but there's a way for us to go through this. Okay. And so if you would like to be a part of the show, to be considered to be a part of the show, please email drkidspeaks@gmail.com. And my team will be happy to get you on there. And last but not least, absolutely, I love those of you who are on here every week and sharing your very intimate relationship. This intimacy I'm talking about is something that is yours. Your intro personally intimate. It's within yourself. but you will take the time to say, I am at a place where I can share this. You know, you are on your grieving continuum, growth and developmental continuum, going through this thing here. Okay. So I do thank you. I do thank you. And thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much. Chris, do you have any retreat coming up soon? I'm going to sit down and work that through. And I've had that question from so many couples. We have not done one since since the pandemic, COVID. But I'm thinking that we might start that, go back to maybe doing those again, because I've had just so many people who love the idea of a retreat. And of course, the retreat, it lasts for a weekend. So you really get to be saturated in this. It's not 1 hour, 2 hours. You get saturated and you watch other people go through and share. And there's just dynamic learning about yourself by looking at other people. And nobody is shamefaced. Nobody. No, there's no blaming. It's a no blame game. All right. So thank you, 6'5". We will. Are there retreats? Are your retreats for couples only? Now, marriage retreats are for couples only, but relational retreats, those are 1 day retreats. 1 day retreats. Okay, so yeah, I do make a distinction in that, but both are really, really good. And or if I did a weekend retreat, then instead of me providing accommodation, I would let you go at the end of the day and come back the next day. So you go back to to the way you would normally live, and because now we're getting into issues of morality, and that's not what the retreats are about. The retreats are about interpersonal relationships. So I've got to be very careful how I do this, and so I think I'm on the right track. When my wife and I, when we do retreats, so we'll let you all know. All right. Thank you so much. God bless you. Looking forward to seeing you again next week for installment number 3. And just be here and we'll let you know. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.